Lan Xichen, Wei Wuxian murmured. He reached out and grabbed one of Lan Xichen's sleeves. Lao Wenji, who had been keeping watch by his side, immediately leaned over to answer him softly. "I'm here." Wei Wuxian was not quite awake. His eyes were tightly shut, but his grip on Lao Wenji did not loosen. He seemed to be dreaming and mumbling in his sleep. Don't be mad." Lao Wenji was slightly taken aback. In a gentle voice, he replied, "I'm not." "Oh," Wei Wuxian murmured. He seemed to be reassured by hearing that and released his grip. Lao Wenji sat down by Wei Wuxian's side. When Wei Wuxian had stilled once more, he made to get up but was stopped by Wei Wuxian grabbing hold of him again. Wei Wuxian clung to his arm and pleaded urgently, "I'll return with you. Hurry up and take me back home with you." Lao Wenji's eyes widened. Wei Wuxian seemed to have woken himself up with that shout. His long lashes fluttered and he slowly opened his eyes. The dazed confusion in his eyes gradually cleared and he suddenly realized he was clinging to Lao Wenji with both arms like he were a lifeline or driftwood in water. He immediately withdrew his hands and made to roll away, but the exaggerated movement aggravated the wound on his abdomen. He muttered an ouch and wrinkled his brow, only now remembering that he was still wounded. His vision flared with sparks from the pain, and faces flashed before his eyes. Jinliang, Jiang Chen, Jian Li, Jiang Femian, Madame Yu. Lao Wenji held him down to steady him. "Your stomach wound?" "Wound? I'm fine. It doesn't hurt." Lao Wenji firmly held him down and loosened his robes. His abdomen had been properly bandaged, but Lao Wenji unraveled them to check the injuries beneath. Surprisingly enough, the wound had already healed. When Lao Wenji checked his leg, the curse mark there had vanished as well. "How long have I been out?" Wei Wuxian asked. Lao Wenji released him only after confirming that his wound was indeed fine. 4 days. Jinliang's aim had been unerring, and the wound hadn't been shallow either. That the injury had healed without leaving the slightest scar was all thanks to the top-grade medicinal pills of the Lan clan. Wei Wuxian gave his thanks and followed up with a self-deprecating jibe. "I might have been reborn, but this new body is so fragile. One little step and I'm laid low." "Anyone would be laid low if they were run through by a sword," Lao Wenji replied evenly. "Not necessarily," Wei Wuxian stated. "Had I been in my old body, even if half of my intestines were hanging out, I'd be able to stuff them back in and continue brawling for another 300 rounds." Seeing that right after he woke up he began to speak nonsense again, Lao Wenji shook his head and turned away. Wei Wuxian thought that he was going to leave. He hurried. Lan Xichen, don't go! I was talking nonsense, my fault, but don't ignore me." Lao Wenji. "Even you are scared of others ignoring you?" Wei Wuxian. I am. He hadn't experienced the feeling of having somebody at his side when he had gotten hurt and woke up for a long time. 2 swords were worn at Lao Wenji's waist. He took off Suibian and passed it to him. Your sword. Seeing the sword, Wei Wuxian first hesitated. He quickly replied, "Thank you." Holding the hilt, he slowly pulled it out. A pair of eyes were reflected against the snow-white blade. Wei Wuxian stared at the pair of eyes for a while before he put Suibian back into its sheath again. "It really did seal itself?" Lao Wenji grabbed the hilt of the Suibian as well. He pulled out, but it didn't move at all. Wei Wuxian sighed. He patted the body of the sword. "I knew that Jin Guangyao didn't dare make things up without any basis, so it really did seal itself. I just happened to have run into something amazing that only happens once in 10,000 years. It's all over now. The evidence is ironclad. Whoever pulled it out had to be Wei Wuxian, no exceptions. I can't deny it even if I want to." He looked around. It was a clean room. The light was dim with only a paper lantern at one corner. Wei Wuxian asked, "Where is this?" Lao Wenji. "The cloud recesses." Wei Wuxian. "You took me back to the cloud recesses? What if your brother finds out?" Someone spoke. "I have already found out." The person walked out from behind the screen. With white clothes and a forehead ribbon, his face was like jade, though his expression was sullen. Having rested in the cloud recesses without having been taken away by the Lan Xichen people, it was clear that Lan Xichen wasn't any threat to them. And, along with the fact that Lao Wenji was right by his side, Wei Wuxian wasn't on his guard at all. He suddenly recalled something and asked, "Where's Chivensun's body?" Lan Xichen. "The many sects have already seen with their own eyes brother's body. It is being kept by Huasang. As of the moment, I have sent those I trust to watch over it as well." Wei Wuxian felt, to an extent, relieved. He asked again, "Jin Guangyao's reaction?" Lao Wenji. "Flawless." Wei Wuxian had known that Jin Guangyao would definitely perfect his act. It'd be fine as long as it was confirmed that he couldn't have got rid of the corpse. However, Lan Xichen spoke slowly. He said that he would definitely get to the bottom of the matter and give everyone an explanation. Now that young Master Wei is awake, then Wenji, is it not time for you to give me an explanation as well? Lao Wenji stood up. "Brother!" Lan Xichen let out a long sigh. "Wenji, what do you want me to say to you?" Lao Wenji. "Brother, Chivensun's head is indeed in Jin Guangyao's hands." Lan Xichen. "You saw with your own eyes?" Lao Wenji. "He saw with his own eyes." Lan Xichen. "You believe in him?" Lao Wenji. "I do," he answered without any hesitation. Wei Wuxian felt his chest warm up. Lan Xichen continued. "What about Jin Guangyao?" Lao Wenji. "Not to be believed." Lan Xichen chuckled. "Wenji, then how do you judge whether someone should be believed or not?" He looked at Wei Wuxian. "You trust young Master Wei, while I trust Jin Guangyao. The fact that brother's head is in his hands, neither of us have seen it with our own eyes. We only believe in what another person says based on how much we know about them." You think that you know about Wei Wuxian, so you trust him. I think that I know about Jin Guangyao, so I trust him as well. You believe in your judgment, then Am I not allowed to believe in my judgment? Wei Wuxian, worried that the two brothers would quarrel because of this, quickly interjected. Exactly, Lan. It wasn't that he couldn't understand Lan Xichen. Watching Jin Guangyao from the perspective of Ni Mengxue, he had seen all of his craft and his ambition. However, if Jin Guangyao had always shown Lan Xichen his disguise, there was no reason for Lan Xichen not to believe in his sworn brother and instead one of the most infamous people. Lan Xichen nodded. Young Master Wei, no need to worry. Before the truth is entirely revealed, I will not be partial to either side or reveal your whereabouts. Or else, I would not have allowed Wanji to take you to my hanshi or help with your injuries. Wei Wuxian. Exactly, Lan. I'm grateful that you gave me this opportunity. The fact that Qi Wenzun's head is inside of Jin Guangyao's secret chamber is nothing but true. Not only have I seen it, I've seen some other things due to having been affected by its energy of resentment. Maybe this could offer some proof. Lan Xichen replied calmly. Young Master Wei, perhaps you have seen some things indeed. However, you cannot prove that you saw those things within the secret chamber of Koi Tower. Wei Wuxian. That's true. Then how about something else? The direct cause of Qi Wenzun's death was a Qi deviation. But, Secretly Lan, don't you think that the timing is a bit too much of a coincidence? The doings of the sword spirit might be one of the reasons, but have you ever thought that there might be another cause to it? Lan Xichen. What do you think the cause is? Wei Wuxian. The Song of Clarity. Lan Xichen. Young Master Wei, did you know that his Song of Clarity had been taught by me personally? Wei Wuxian. In that case, I'd like to ask Secretly Lan to listen and see if there's anything off about this melody. His flute was right there at the head of the bed. So Wei Wuxian picked it up. He lowered his head and thought for a moment before he began to play. Once the song was over, he asked, Secretly Lan, is this really the song you taught Jin Guangyao? It is, Lan Xichen confirmed. Wei Wuxian was a little surprised, but he kept his cool. What's it called? This piece is called Cleansing, Lan Xichen answered. It can purify the heart and calm the mind. Cleansing, Wei Wuxian echoed. I've listened to plenty of famous songs from around the cultivation world, so why have I never heard this name or its melody before? The piece is obscure, Lan Wenzhi said, and difficult to learn. Precisely, Lan Xichen agreed. Did Jin Guangyao specifically ask to learn this piece? Wei Wuxian asked. Correct, Lan Xichen confirmed. Is it really that hard to learn? Wei Wuxian wondered. Then why did Jin Guangyao pick it and not something easier? Because I told him that even though cleansing is hard to learn, it is of the utmost effectiveness, Lan Xichen explained. And yes, the piece is indeed tricky. Did Wei Guanzi not just play one of the sections incorrectly? Something clicked in Wei Wuxian's mind when he heard this. I played it wrong? There was a section in the middle that was incorrect, Lan Wenzhi confirmed. Wei Wuxian laughed. Nah, it wasn't me who was wrong. It was Jin Guangyao. That was definitely what he played during the assault of resentful energy. I guarantee you that I replayed that version without a single mistake. Lan Xichen was astonished. Then he was the one who learned it wrong? That is impossible. That's true indeed, Wei Wuxian said. Lian Fenzun is awfully smart and has an excellent memory. How could he have misremembered the melody? I'm afraid it's most likely intentional. I played again. Seklidilan, Hangguanjun. This time, please listen carefully to the incorrect bit. He played the song again. When he neared the end of the second section, Lao Wenji said, "Stop. It is the section you just played," Lan Xichen said. Wei Wuxian withdrew the flute from his lips. "Really? It doesn't sound out of place to me." "It certainly is not discordant," Lan Xichen agreed, "but it does not form part of cleansing." If it had been an ordinary mistake, it would not have blended so seamlessly with the rest of the original melody, like milk in water. This particular revision must have been deliberately polished before its conclusion, and the unfamiliar melody that had crept its way into cleansing was very plausibly the key to mxtx's death. Lan Xichen thought for a moment and said, "Both of you, come with me." As they stepped out of the house, Wei Wuxian was slightly taken aback. It was a secluded little cottage within some hidden corner of the cloud recesses. The Lan sect's residence was inside of the mountains. In its bounds, pines grew endlessly. Most of the plants were trees and grasses. It wasn't that there were no flowers, but that the flowers were mostly pure, elegant varieties like magnolia, gardenia, and white chrysanthemum, and even then only as rare decorative glimpses. Yet, the area before this house was filled with purple gentians. The buds were small, while the color was brilliant, gaining the love of whoever passed. Under the light, it seemed to glow softly, as beautiful as a dream, an illusion. Wei Wuxian knew that this place was definitely different from the rest. However, he only had time to have an overall glance at it. It was already past 9. Most of the people within the cloud recesses had rested long ago. It was extremely quiet. Not a single person passed their way as Lan Xichen led them to the library pavilion. The cloud recesses had once been burned to the ground. While this library pavilion was no longer the one of the past, its layout was no different from the original after its reconstruction. Even the magnolia tree outside the pavilion had been planted anew. The three entered the pavilion, and Wei Wuxian voiced his doubt. "Seklidalan, can we find the source of that melody here?" "Not here," Lan Xichen said. He walked to a particular row of bookshelves and crouched down to lift a mat that covered a wooden panel. "But here?" "Yes." A secret door lay beneath the wooden panel. "The room of forbidden books," Lao Wenji explained. Under the door was a flight of stairs over 50 steps low. The three walked down one by one. What came into Wei Wuxian's eyes was a wide, dry underground room made of stone. The sound of footsteps echoed emptily. Rows and rows of bookshelves stood within the room. Books sparsely rested along the shelves. They were covered in dust, as though nobody had flipped through them in a long time. Lan Xichen led them to one of the bookshelves. This section is all books of strange songs. There was a desk in the room and only one paper lamp on the desk. Lan Wangji took from the shelves a writing brush and paper that hadn't been used in years. He wrote down by memory 3 copies of the melody score. The 3 of them sat around the desk and got to work. Each was responsible for a few dozens of books. They compared the melody to scores copied down onto the books, book by book, page by page, searching for parts that matched. However, 4 hours had passed and none of the 3 found a score that was the same as the melody. This meant that they didn't find its source. Wei Wuxian scanned the scores as quick as he could, thinking to himself, maybe even the song section of the Lan Sect's room of forbidden books don't have the melody, but that's impossible. If even the Lan Sect didn't collect it, other places wouldn't have either. Would it be that Jin Guangyao created such a remarkable song himself? If so, then it'd be a pain. The only way to verify that something is wrong with the song would be to get someone to listen to this song for months to experiment. But even though he's clever, he never had a solid foundation. So he couldn't be so clever as to be able to create. After having stared at tiny, tightly packed words for so long, Wei Wuxian's vision was getting a little blurry. He had several books still left in his stack, so he planned on coming back to them after he took a short break. Lan Wangji had already finished reviewing his own pile. He quietly took the books that Wei Wuxian had set aside and lowered his head as he continued to flip through them. Lan Xichen witnessed this scene when he glanced up. He seemed to want to say something, but ultimately held himself back. Just then, Lan Wangji said, "This one." He passed over the book he held. Wei Wuxian promptly perked up. He eagerly looked over the 2 pages Lan Wangji had presented to him, comparing it to the fragmentary score in his hands. "It's not the same at all." Lan Wangji moved to sit down beside him and point out the detail he'd spotted. "Consider the pages in sequence." With their heads so close together, Lan Wangji's voice was right next to his ear, low and magnetic. Wei Wuxian's hand trembled slightly and the book nearly slipped from his grip. With some difficulty, he collected himself and forced himself to tear his eyes away from Lan Wangji's long, fair, slender fingers. He carefully compared the pages before him. "Oh, the front and back." At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything strange with the scorebook. However, those familiar with music would be able to tell with just some attention that, on the page that it flipped open to, the melody on the former side wasn't connected to that of the latter side. Wei Wuxian picked up his flute and played a section according to the score. As expected, the 2 parts of the melody were disconnected. The half of the score on the first page was in the same song as that on the second page at all. There should be another page between these 2 pages. It had been torn off, cautiously, stealthily. The person tore the page with a lot of care. There wasn't a single trace left of the page, which made it difficult to be discovered. Wei Wuxian turned over the book. on the dark blue cover, there was a title of 3 characters. Wei Wuxian. The Collection of Turmoil? What book is this? The songs in it sound a bit strange. A collection of secret songs from Dongying, Lan Xichen explained. From Dongying? Wei Wuxian echoed. No wonder they don't sound like anything from over here. Lan Xichen wore a complicated expression. It has been said that the collection of spirit turmoil was compiled by a disciple of the Lan clan of Guizhou during his years spent wandering Dongying after drifting there by a boat. It is a collection of wicked songs. If one were to infuse spiritual energy into any of the pieces in this book while playing them, the songs could be used to do harm to others. One could make them waste away, drive them to irascible moods, agitate their vital energy, lose their 5 senses. Those possessing great spiritual power could even end a person's life within 7 notes. Wei Wuxian smacked the desk. This is it! In his moment of joy, the blow almost knocked over the paper lantern on the desk. A keen-eyed Lan Wangji deftly caught it in time. Say, little Lan, is there a song in the collection of spirit turmoil that can disturb someone's mind, agitate their primordial spirit, unsettle their vital energy, and make them easily prone to anger? Wei Wuxian asked. There should be, Lan Xichen granted. Wei Wuxian. Jin Guangyao's spiritual energy isn't high. He wouldn't have been able to take someone's life with just 7 notes, and killing him this way would have been too obvious. He definitely wouldn't have chosen a song so powerful. But if he could use the reason of playing the Song of Clarity for Chiwenzun to calm his temper and continue to play it for 3 months, would the song be able to act as a slow poison and catalyze Chiwenzun's outburst? Lan Xichen. Yes. Wei Wuxian. Then the speculation would be very much reasonable. The tone score, not part of cleansing, belonged to a missing page of the collection of turmoil. All of Dongyin's songs recorded in the collection of turmoil are complex and difficult to master. He didn't have time to copy them down in the forbidden room and could only tear it out. No, that wouldn't be right. Jin Guangyao is able to look at something once and never forget it again. He tore the page out not because he couldn't memorize it, but that there'd be no proof once it was gone. To ensure, even if one day it came to light or if he was caught red-handed, nobody would be able to find the source of the melody. Everything he's ever done, he's done with extreme caution. He played the real version of cleansing when you were present. Chiwenzun wasn't a man who was interested in artistic pursuits, but he had a basic impression of the melody from hearing Sakli de Lan play it. Because of that, Jin Guangyao didn't dare play the wicked song outright. Instead, he went to significant trouble to fuse 2 tunes with very different styles and completely opposite effects. To think he could knit them into a seamless whole, his musical talent is outstanding. My guess is that he infused very little spiritual energy when playing cleansing, but went it all out when he got to the beat from the collection of spirit turmoil. Chiwenzun wasn't familiar with this cultivation technique. He would never have been able to tell that cleansing had been altered by Jin Guangyao into a deadly, diabolical ditty. After a long stretch of silence, Lan Xichen said quietly, "Although he frequents the cloud recesses, I have never told him of the library pavilion's room of forbidden books." "Exactly, Lan," Wei Wuxian said. "Excuse me for being blunt, but Liang Funzun was an undercover agent in the Wen clan of Jizhen's Nightless City during the Sunshot campaign, and an exceptional one at that. He was able to find Wenruhan's secret chamber and sneak into it unnoticed, to memorize all the maps and records there, then transcribe the information from memory to send back to Golden Cup Tower. To him, the Land Library Pavilion's room of forbidden books really is nothing." Lan Xichen stared at the fragmented melody in his hand for a moment, then said, "I will think of a way to test this." "Xiang," Lao Wenji asked. When Daga passed away, the siege of the Burial Mounds had already concluded and Wei Guns was no longer with us, Lan Xichen said. "If the tests prove your deductions to be true and not a fabrication, if they prove this fragmented skull is capable of disturbing the mind, Surgeon," Wei Wuxian said. "Testing a wicked song on a living person probably goes against the Lan clan's precepts. I will test it on myself," Lan Xichen stated. As the head of the Lan clan of Guzu, to say something so preposterous made it obvious his mind was in turmoil. Lao Wenji raised his voice slightly. "Xiang," Lan Xichen supported his head on his hand. His voice was low, as though he was trying to hold something back. "Wanji, the version of Jin Guangyao that I know is entirely different compared to the version that you know, and the version that the world knows. Throughout all these years, in my eyes, he has always been enduring his suffer, caring for all people, treating everyone with respect. I have always believed, without a doubt, that the criticism he received from the others all came from misunderstandings, that what I knew, how he truly is. Now, you want me to believe at once that everything about this person is fake, that he planned to kill one of his sworn brothers, that I was also a part of his plan and even helped him? Could you please allow me some more discretion before I make my own judgment?" Lan Xichen had taught Jin Guangyao the Song of Clarity, keeping in mind the grudge between Jin Guangyao and Ni Mengzhe, hoping that they could be how they used to be. He requested Jin Guangyao to help calm Ni Mengzhe in place of him. Who would have known that his kindness made possible Jin Guangyao's cruelty? How should he face himself now? None of three said anything. After they had walked out of the library pavilion, Lao Wenji finally spoke. "I will go see uncle." Having been silent for a long time, Lan Xichen spoke as well. "I will bring young Master Wei back. You can come afterwards." Leading Wei Wuxian, he walked along the white pebble paths of the cloud recesses for a while before they returned to the secluded gentian-filled cottage in the depths of the mountains. Wei Wuxian stood in front of the door. Does Mr. Lan know that, Han Guanjun? Lan Xichen. Uncle has just woken up. I told everyone not to tell him anything unnecessary. If Lan Xichen found out what he and Lao Wenji had done at Golden Carp Tower, he'd surely be rendered comatose with fury once more after only just waking. It's been tough on Lan Lao Xianbei, Wei Wuxian said. It has indeed been tough on Shifu. Lan Xichen agreed. Out of the blue, he asked, Wei Ganser, do you know what this house is? Why does Sir Vijan think I'd know? Wei Wuxian asked curiously. Lan Xichen glanced at him. This was once my mother's residence in the cloud recesses. Of course, his mother was Lao Wenji's mother too. Wei Wuxian found this rather strange. The heads of the Lan clan of Guzu traditionally took the wintry room as their residence, which was a far cry from the small cottage tucked away in a nook of the cloud recesses. Could it be that Lao Wenji's parents lived separately because they were like Jiang Fengmian and Madame Yu, an incompatible pair in a forced marriage? No matter how you considered it, there couldn't have been a pleasant reason for why the family head and mistress didn't live together. The wife of Xiang Henjun, the previous head of the Lan clan of Guzu, was said to have been frail and perpetually in a convalescent state, which made it inadvisable for her to host guests. People knew very little about her to begin with, and so everyone privately speculated that this illness might be a front for something too disgraceful to be seen in public, such as a disfigurement or disability. As such, it wasn't Wei Wuxian's place to pry. He held his tongue and waited for Lan Xichen to speak on his own terms. Wei Ganser, Lan Xichen stated, You are probably aware that my father was in seclusion year-round and paid no attention to the affairs of the secular world. The Lan clan of Guzu was managed by my Shifu almost single-handedly all those years. That I know, Wei Wuxian confirmed. Lan Xichen dropped his hand. The hand that he held Libyan with was hidden within his sleeve. He spoke slowly. The reason that my father often practiced secluded meditation was my mother. This place, compared to a place of living, was more like a place of detention. Wei Wuxian was surprised. The father of Sir Vijun and Han Guanjun, Xiang Henjun, used to be a famous cultivator. He made his name at a young age and had many things waiting for him in the future. However, at the age of 20, he suddenly backed away and announced his marriage. He had also ceased to care for much of the world. Although it was called secluded meditation, it was much more like retirement. People had come up with many possible reasons, but none of them had been verified. Lan Xichen bent down amid the clusters of gentians. He gently stroked those thin, tender petals. When my father was young, when he returned from a night hunt once, he saw my mother outside of the Gusu city. He smiled. I heard that it was love at first sight. Wei Wuxian grinned as well. The young are often sentimental. Lan Xichen continued. However, the woman did not care for him as much. In addition, she killed one of my father's teachers. This was beyond imagination. Although Wei Wuxian knew that asking too many questions would be very rude, whenever he remembered that those were Lan Wangji's parents, he felt that he just had to ask. Why? Lan Xichen: I do not know, but I assume that it was something along the lines of grievances. Wei Wuxian didn't ask any more to this and forced down his curiosity. And what happened later? And then Lan Xichen explained. When my father heard of this, of course he was in much pain. But no matter how he struggled, he still took the woman to his sect in secrecy. Ignoring the objections from his clan, he knelt with her for the heavens and the earth without making a sound and told everyone in the clan that she would be his wife for the rest of his life. That whoever wanted to harm her would have to pass through him first. Wei Wuxian widened his eyes. Lan Xichen continued. After the ceremony was completed, my father found a house and locked my mother inside. He found another house and locked himself inside. It was called secluded meditation, but it was, in truth, to repent. He paused before speaking again. Young Master Wei, can you understand why he did such a thing? Wei Wuxian answered after a moment of silence. He could neither forgive the one who killed his teacher, nor watch the death of the woman who he loved. He could only marry her to protect her life and force himself not to see her. Lan Xichen: do you think that this was right? Wei Wuxian: I don't know. Lan Xichen looked somewhat lost. Then, what do you think would be right? Wei Wuxian: I don't know. A while later, Lan Xichen whispered, it could be said that my father did this without a care for anything else. All of the seniors of the clan were enraged, but they had all watched him grow up. They could not do anything except guard the secret, hint to the outside world that the wife of the Gusulan sect leader had an unspeakable disease and could not see others. After Wangji and I were born, we were immediately taken out to be cared for by other people. When we grew older, we were brought to uncle to be taught. My Shufu is frank and upright by nature. Because my mother's crimes caused my father to destroy his own life, he came to particularly loathe those who behaved with such disregard. For that reason, he was particularly strict when raising Wangji and I. We could only see our mother once a month in this little cottage. They were two young children who faced every day only their harsh uncle, strict teachings, and mountains of books. No matter how tired, they had to straighten their soft backs to be the most outstanding disciples of the clan, the model students in others' eyes. They could rarely see their closest relatives. They couldn't fool around in their father's arms. They couldn't act spoiled in front of their mother. But they had clearly done nothing wrong. Lan Xichen: every time Wangji and I went to see her, she had never complained about how tedious it was locked inside of here, unable to go out one step. She had never asked about our studies either. She especially liked to tease Wangji, but Wangji, the more you tease him, the less willing he is to talk, the worse of an expression he puts on. He has been like this ever since he was young. However, he chuckled, even though Wangji never said it, I knew that every month he was looking forward to the day he could see mother. He was like this, and I was the same. Wei Wuxian imagined a young Lao Wenji hugged inside of his mother's arms, his snowy little cheeks flushed pink. He laughed as well, but before his smile had even melted, Lan Xichen continued. But one day, Uncle suddenly told us that we would not need to go any longer. Mother was gone. Wei Wuxian's voice was soft. How old was Lan Xichen back then? Lan Xichen. 6. He continued. He was still too young to understand what gone means. No matter how much others comforted him, how much uncle scolded him, he would continue to come back here every single month, sit down in the hallway and wait for someone to open the door for him. When he grew older, he understood that mother would not come back anymore, that nobody would open the door for him, but he kept on coming here. Lan Xichen stood up. His dark eyes looked into Wei Wuxian's. Wenji has been this stubborn ever since he was young. The leaves rustled and gentian flowers swished alongside the wind, their scent lingering. Wei Wuxian's eyes landed on the wooden hallway of the cottage. He could almost see a small child wearing a forehead ribbon sitting in proper posture in front of the house, waiting quietly for the door to open. He spoke. Madame Lan must have been a very gentle woman. Lan Xichen. In my memories, mother had indeed been so. I do not know why she did such a thing back then, and in truth, He took in a deep breath before confessing. Do not want to know either. After a few moments of silence, Lan Xichen closed his eyes. He took out Li Biang. A gust of night wind suddenly sent forth a sobbing note of the xiao. The sound was deep, like a sigh. Wei Wuxian had heard Lan Xichen play Li Biang before. Its timbre was just like Lan Xichen himself, as warm and graceful as the breeze and the rain of spring. Yet now, although his technique was as excellent as ever, the tone evoked a strange mixture of feelings. The night wind swept by. Lan Xichen's hair and forehead ribbon were already somewhat disheveled. However, the Gusulan sect leader, who had always regarded appearance highly, didn't pay any attention to them. He only put down Li Biang after the song had finished. Music is forbidden at night in the cloud recesses. Today I have gone many times too far. Excuse me, young Master Wei. Wei Wuxian. How so? Sergeant, have you forgotten that the person standing in front of you is the person who has broken the most rules? Lan Xichen smiled. The Gusulan sect had never revealed to the outside Wanji and my pasts. I should not have told you. Tonight was my sudden urge to unburden myself, a spur of the moment. Wei Wuxian. I'm not the kind of person who talks too much. Don't worry, Sergeant. Lan Xichen. Regardless, I would assume that Wanji would not hide anything from you anyways. Wei Wuxian. If he doesn't wish to talk about something, then I won't ask. Lan Xichen. But with Wanji's personality, how could he say anything if you don't ask? There are some things that even if you ask him, he would not say. Wei Wuxian was going to speak again when he heard footsteps come from behind him. He turned around to see Lan Wangji approach, bathed in moonlight. His right hand held 2 round liquor jars with red covers. Wei Wuxian's eyes lit up. "Hang Wanjun, you really are considerate." Lan Wangji walked closer and gave him the jars of Emperor's Smile. Jars in his arm, Wei Wuxian walked inside. To his back, Lan Wangji shook his head, though his gaze was softer than ever. Lan Xichen glanced at him. "You took them from your room?" Lan Wangji nodded. Lan Xichen, "You had best not touch alcohol," Lan Xichen advised. "Be careful not to end up as you did back then." His eyes fell upon the fold of clothing near Lan Wangji's collarbone. Lan Wangji lowered his head to glance at his chest. "It will not happen again." Lan Xichen forced a smile, then heaved another sigh. After Lan Xichen left, Lan Wangji entered the room and gently closed the door. As Wei Wuxian removed the seal on the wine jug, he mulled over the story of the founder of the Lan clan of Guzu, Lan An, as well as that Xiang. The Lan clan really is an enigmatic bunch. Although the founder was a monk and their family traditions are so rigid, they really breed some die-hard romantics. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at the other descendant of the Gusulan sect in the room. Lan Wangji was reading a book, his head down. A paper lantern was on the corner of the desk. Against the soft light of the fire, his face was even more like a piece of wine jade. Even his indifferent expression and his light eyes seemed to have been glazed a shade warmer. He was so beautiful that it seemed unreal. Caught by the moment, Wei Wuxian was somehow entranced. Involuntarily, he inched closer. Lan Wangji looked up, asking, "What?" Wei Wuxian immediately returned to himself. "Nothing. Your bookmark looks quite pretty." Lan Wangji's bookmark was a dried flower in a light shade. It had been kept with much care, its color as vibrant ever. The petals and the veins were so delicate that it seemed to be alive. Between pages, it let off a soft aroma. Wei Wuxian picked out the bookmark and asked, "Herb peony?" Lan Wangji, Wei Wuxian played with the bookmark in his hands before giving it back to him. "Your brother received quite a big shock." With care, Lan Wangji put the dried herb peony back into the book. He shut the pages. "Now that he has found the evidence, he will not tolerate this." Wei Wuxian, "Of course, he's your brother after all." No matter how close of a relationship Lan Xichen and Jin Guangyao had, he was still from the Gusulan sect and had his own principles. Wei Wuxian opened one of liquor jar. The time before the last time Lan Xichen was drunk, he answered honestly that he's never had the Emperor's Smile in his room before. Then why did he hide him? He couldn't have been saving them just for me, could he? It's a bit of shameless if I think about it this way. Speaking of it, should I apologize for the whole thing with the forehead ribbon? After all, I've played with it so many times already. What if he's so embarrassed that he gets mad and kicks me out of here? No matter what, I fooled around so much and he hasn't gotten angry at all. Clearly his self-restraint is getting better and better. I'm sure that even if I fool around some more, he won't get angry. No, I shouldn't ask him. How about I just pretend that I don't know what the forehead ribbon means? Then next time, I'll be able to pull it again on purpose. If he gets mad, I'll pretend to be innocent and say that I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a sin. Wei Wuxian was feeling quite pleased with himself. Lan Wangji asked, "What happened?" He turned around with a serious expression. "Nothing. I'm in a good mood." Not paying attention, he opened a jar, picked it up, and swallowed a gulp of it before suddenly spitting it out with a pff. Lan Wangji put down his book at once. "What happened this time?" Wei Wuxian waved his hands. "Nothing, nothing, nothing." As he said nothing, he put the jar back where it had been and picked up another one with a dejected look on his face. The last time he snuck a jar of liquor, he purposely put water inside to surprise Lan Wangji if he ever drank it. However, he didn't know that his luck was so bad. The 2 jars that Lan Wangji had brought just happened to include this jar of pure water, and he drank it himself. Even after he came back, whenever he wanted to tease Lan Wangji, he ended up shooting himself in the foot. He just couldn't understand it. Wei Wuxian slept sometime later. He was asleep until early morning when he suddenly woke up. With a shiver, he crawled forward and looked up. Lan Wangji was still dressed, sword was on his back. As he took back the hand that he had put on Wei Wuxian's shoulder, he stared at a white object within his palm. "We have an uninvited guest." Wei Wuxian squinted to see. The object was the Gusulan sect's jade token of passage. He could recall that Lan Wangji's token was a very high level, able to alert him if others intruded over the barrier of the Gusulan sect. But nobody had dared intrude the cloud recesses in dozens of years. Wei Wuxian hopped off the bed. He discovered that his outer robe had been taken off sometime during his sleep. He put it on as he spoke. "Who is it?" Lan Wangji shook his head, gesturing for Wei Wuxian to follow him. The 2 had walked steadily until they arrived at a residence amid lush bamboos. Light seeped from the paper windows. Wei Wuxian glanced at the wooden plaques in front of the courtyard. The Hanshi? As expected, Lan Xichen sat back straight within the room. Seeing the 2 enter, he didn't seem surprised at all. He exchanged a look with Lan Wangji, and both of them understood. Lan Wangji led Wei Wuxian to sit behind the screen. A while later, the bamboo curtains of the Hanshi was lifted. A series of soft footsteps entered the room. The person seemed to have sat down before Lan Xichen. A few moments later came the sound of jade knocking against each other. It sounded as if somebody had put something onto the table and pushed it over. The first to speak was Lan Xichen. "What does this mean?" Somebody spoke. "To return to you, brother." It was Jin Guangyao. Lan Xichen, "I have already given this to you." Jin Guangyao, "The token of passage has never failed before. Now that it has failed, it's time for it to be returned to its rightful owner." Wei Wuxian understood now. Since Sir Jin and Lian Fenzun had quite a good relationship, Lan Xichen had given Jin Guangyao a token of passage as well so that he could visit freely. However, it was likely that within the past few days he had either edited the prohibitions of the cloud recesses barrier or retracted the permission of Jin Guangyao's token of passage. When Jin Guangyao came to visit, he was refused permission to enter, and thus he voluntarily returned the token. Like Lao Wenqi, Lan Xichen didn't know how to feign compliance either. Jin Guangyao backed off his advance, while Lan Xichen said nothing. A moment later, he spoke. "What did you come for?" Jin Guangyao: "We still don't have any news on Han Guangjun and the Yilin Patriarch. I didn't let anyone search the cloud recesses, and many sects are already in doubt with many objections. Brother, whenever it works for you, it'd still be best for you to open the doors for 2 hours. Then I'll be able to take people over and deal with the situation." Wei Wuxian had thought that he was here to demand a search. He didn't expect at all that Jin Guangyao would say such a thing, as though not at all interested in searching where the Yilin Patriarch had gone. He couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised. On the other side of the screen, Jin Guangyao continued. "Brother, what's wrong?" Lan Xichen: "Nothing." Jin Guangyao: "If you are worried about Wenqi, then please relax. Han Guangjun's character is upright and honest. All of the sects have seen this throughout the years. He must be only doing this because he's been lied to in some way. Besides, he hasn't done anything unforgivable yet. It'll be fine as long as he explains when the time comes. I won't let anyone take the chance to spread rumors." Lan Xichen: "When the time comes? When would that be?" Jin Guangyao: "After we clean out Burial Mound." Wei Wuxian paused in surprise. Lan Xichen: "Burial Mound?" Jin Guangyao began to explain further. "Since the fight at Golden Carp Tower, anomalies have been sighted in Moling, Lanling, Yumeng, and more. Graveyards have been destroyed, corpses have vanished without a trace. There are signs that a large number of corpses are moving in the direction of Yilian. They are probably heading for the Burial Mounds." "For what purpose?" Lan Xichen wondered. "I don't know," Jin Guangyao said. "People have speculated that Wei Wuxian has initiated some kind of evil array or used the Yin Tiger Tally. He was stabbed by Jin Liang at Golden Carp Tower. Is he in any state to initiate such things?" Lan Xichen pointed out. "Arga, consider the extent of Wei Wuxian's injuries during the battle with sect leader Xiang, when he betrayed the Xiang clan of Yumeng," Jin Guangyao said. "Didn't he still return to summon and command corpses? Is there anything in the world that could prove difficult for the Yilin Patriarch?" Wei Wuxian stroked his chin. "You think too highly of me." "So I suspect there will be a second siege of the Burial Mound soon," Jin Guangyao continued. "I've already asked a few other clans to attend Golden Carp Tower to discuss this matter. Arga, are you coming?" Lan Xichen answered after a while. "Yes, go and wait for me in the elegance room. I will leave with you shortly." After Jin Guangyao left, Lan Xichen stepped behind the screen and exchanged a look with Lao Wenqi. "I'm going to Golden Carp Tower. Both of you go to the Burial Mounds. We will split up." Lao Wenqi slowly nodded. Very good. If he is truly false, I will not tolerate it, Lan Xichen said. I know, Lan Wangji said. The two descended the cloud recesses along a paved trail. On the way, a thick patch of grass beside the white stone path suddenly rustled and parted. A small snowball-like furry head and a pair of long ears popped out. The rabbit's pink nose twitched. When it saw Lan Wangji, its drooping ears suddenly perked up and it sprang toward him with a kick of its legs. They had come upon a grassy area. Little Apple was settled next to a tree surrounded by dozens of rotund white rabbits. Most of them had their eyes closed, sound asleep. Only a few were staring. Wei Wuxian walked over to the tree and scratched Little Apple's head. The donkey startled awake, snorting ragged puffs of air through its nostrils. At the sight of Wei Wuxian, it was about to bray loudly when the sleeping bunch of rabbits were all startled awake as well. They shook their long ears and hopped towards Lan Wangji, winking as they did. Fluff ball after fluff ball swarmed his snow-white boots and circled around him, worked up in a flurry of excitement for reasons unknown. Wei Wuxian tugged at Little Apple's reins as he attempted to threaten the donkey into moving. The rabbits stood on their hind legs, clinging to Lan Wangji's legs and trying to climb up. Lan Wangji stood his ground. As the two of them started walking again, the white rabbits stumbled over themselves to follow after the white boots. No matter how Wei Wuxian tried to shoo them away, they refused to leave. Lan Wangji bent down to lift one rabbit in his arms. His expression was still one of indifference, but his touch was gentle. His long, slender fingers scratched the rabbit's chin. The rabbit flicked its long ears and tilted its head, its ruby-red eyes narrowing into a contented line from the scratching. Wei Wuxian tried to give it a scratch too, but it turned its head away from his dastardly hands. Alas, but it disdains me so. It only loves you. Such devotion? Lan Wangji glanced at him before passing the rabbit into his arms. Wei Wuxian took it over with a grin on his face. The rabbit twisted and turned in his arms, struggling as hard as it could. Wei Wuxian tugged its ears. You don't like me? You hate me? Then run away. You can't run away no matter how much you want to. Why don't you just be obedient and like me instead? Pinching the rabbit, Wei Wuxian played with it for a while. When they were almost outside of the gates of the cloud recesses, he finally let go of the rabbit whose white fur had already been tangled by him. Now that the rabbits couldn't follow them any longer, their ears drooped low and sat where they were, watching as their master left. Wei Wuxian glanced back. They can't bear to part from you. Gosh, Guanchen, I didn't expect those little things to like you so much. You must have been very gentle and attentive while you were raising them. I couldn't do that. No? Lan Wangji asked. Nope, Wei Wuxian smugly confirmed. All that flies in the sky, walks on the land, and swims in the water turns and flees at the sight of me. Lao Wenji shook his head. His opinion was all too clear. It must have been Wei Wuxian who terrorized them first, and that was why they didn't like him. After descending the mountain and taking a hidden path as a shortcut, they left the cloud recesses. They kept going until they had completely left the area where Lan sect disciples were active.
Ow! My stomach hurts,
Wei Wuxian suddenly said. Lao Wenji immediately stopped in his tracks. Rest and change your dressings.
Nah,
Wei Wuxian said.
I can just ride the donkey.
Right then, Lao Wenji agreed. Wei Wuxian's expression seemed miserable.
But the moment of getting on the donkey is too big. I'm scared that it'll affect the wound.
His wound had healed long ago. This was clearly being shameless. Lao Wenji stopped, turned around and looked at him. He suddenly reached out. Making sure not to touch where he had been injured, he picked him up by his waist, lifted him gently and placed him onto the back of Lilapo. Of the two, one sat on the donkey while the other pulled the rein. On the back of Lilapo, Wei Wuxian grinned with curving eyes. Lao Wenji asked, "What?"
Wei Wuxian, "Nothing."
Like he had played a trick on someone, he felt somewhat pleased with himself. Although he didn't remember much of the things that happened when he was young, there was one scene that had always been blurrily imprinted within his mind. A narrow path, a little donkey, and 3 people. A man in black gently lifted a woman in white. He picked her up and placed her onto the donkey's back. Then he raised a small child way up high and put him on his shoulders. He was the child, not yet the height of a person's legs. Sitting on the shoulders of the man, he was suddenly very tall, very majestic. Sometimes he pulled the man's hair, sometimes he rubbed his cheeks. He shouted things, swinging his legs about. The woman in white sat on the donkey's back, her back swaying. Watching them, she seemed to smile. The man had always been quiet. He didn't talk much. He only pushed him a bit higher for him to be taller, steadier. One of his hands picked up the donkey's rein. The 3 of them were squeezed onto the same narrow path, walking slowly forward. It was one of the rare pieces of memory that he had. Those were his dad and his mom. Wei Wuxian.
Lan Chan, pick up the rein, won't you?
Lao Wenji.
Why?
Lilapo was quite clever. It wasn't that it didn't know how to follow a person. Wei Wuxian said again.
Humor me, won't you?
Wei Wuxian pleaded.
Come on, hold them.
Although still puzzled to why Wei Wuxian's smile was so dazzling, Lao Wenji did as he was asked and picked up Little Apple's reins. Wei Wuxian voiced his thoughts aloud.
All that's left now is a little one.
What? Revealing in his secret delight, Wei Wuxian said.
Nothing. Lan Chan, you're such a good person.
Their future was uncertain on this trip to Yiliang and fraught with grim possibilities. But as he rode the donkey, with Lao Wenji leading the way, reins in hand, Wei Wuxian was not nervous at all. He was floating on a cloud so free of cares he was practically walking on air. Even if a whole bunch of sets came barreling out from the trees along the roadside, he wouldn't be bothered at all. Well, other than being bothered by them being eyesores and killjoys. He was even in the mood to appreciate the moonlit wild paddy fields that rolled around them. Pulling the bamboo flute from his waist, he began to play a melody as naturally as ever. The sound of the flute was clear and melodious. Lan Wangji's footsteps faltered for a fleeting moment. Wei Wuxian, on the other hand, suddenly had a flash of realization. "Hey, Lan Xichen, I've got a question. What was the name of the song you sang to me back then at the Xuan of Lotus Cave in Mount Mushi?" Lan Wangji regarded him. "What made you think to ask that so suddenly?" "Just tell me, what's it called? I think I might have guessed how you recognized me." By the curious coincidence, the song that he'd played that night at Mount Tafan happened to be the same one Lan Wangji had softly hummed to him when he was delirious with fever in the Xuanyu's Lotus Cave on Mount Mushi. Lan Wangji kept his mouth shut, refusing to say a word. "Tell me, what's the song?" Wei Wuxian pressed. "Who composed it?" "I did," Lan Wangji replied. "You?" Wei Wuxian had thought it was a secret song of the Lan clan of Guzu, one not meant to be told to outsiders. He had never expected this to be the case instead. He was both surprised and delighted. There was no need to explain that he was surprised by, that was obvious enough, but he couldn't exactly say why he was delighted. He ventured. "If that was how you recognized me, does that mean you never let anyone else hear it?" "Never." Wei Wuxian was so happy he accidentally kicked Little Apple. Little Apple brayed furiously as if thinking of kicking its own hind legs to buck him off. Sharp-eyed Lan Wangji deftly tugged the rein tight, and Wei Wuxian wrapped his arms around Little Apple's neck. It's fine. That's just its temper. It'll only fuss a little. Let's keep talking. So, what exactly did you name it?" "What do you think?" "What do you mean, what I think? Does it have a name or not?" Wei Wuxian grumbled inwardly. Lan Xiche's taste in names couldn't be the same as Jiangxin's, could it? "No way." Aloud, he said, "Are you asking my opinion? If you ask me, why not call it..." After Lan Xichen rejected over 80 carefully chosen names, Wei Wuxian's interest finally waned. To avoid running into cultivators searching along the main roads, they chose remote countryside paths. After walking for a day, Wei Wuxian was tired and thirsty. Coincidentally, it was right around then that they spied a farmhouse by the roadside, so Lan Wangji tugged at Little Apple's reins to stop it in its tracks. No one answered when they knocked. Unexpectedly, the door opened by itself when they pushed it. A handmade wooden table stood in the middle of the courtyard with a tray of partially peeled beans on it. Straw was piled high by either wall, and a rake was stuck into the pile. Chicks ran all over the ground, chirping as they pecked away at rice. Wei Wuxian saw a few melons piled at the corner of the courtyard and went over to pick one up. "The owner isn't here. Hangguanjun, let's just help ourselves to these," he said in all seriousness. Lan Wangji was about to take out some money to put on the table when the sound of footsteps echoed from beyond the wall. two sets, one in front and one behind, presumably the owners returning home. The moment Wei Wuxian heard the footsteps, he immediately pounced on Lan Wangji and pushed him into the pile of straw for some reason. Fortunately, Lan Wangji had always been calm and composed, so he did not make a sound at Wei Wuxian's sudden lunge. However, it was obvious he didn't understand why they had to hide. Wei Wuxian was also laboring under a similar confusion. Yeah, why do we have to hide? It's not like villagers in the countryside are going to recognize us. Can't we just tell them honestly that we are here to buy food? Maybe I've committed too many dastardly deeds and have gotten too used to sneaking around. However, with the push, he pushed Lan Wangji's entire body down onto the soft stack of straws. The somewhat forceful position evoked a strange feeling of excitement within him. He decided not to get up. Purposely putting up an act, he raised his index finger, gesturing for Lan Wangji not to make a sound. Then he pretended that this couldn't be helped. Comfortably, he lay on top of Lan Wangji, full of a secretive delight that couldn't be brought to words. The sound of pushing wooden stool came from the yard. The two owners of the farm seemed to have sat down before the table. The sound of a woman spoke up. Argaga, I can hug him. Hearing the Argaga, Lan Wangji paused slightly. A man's voice spoke. You can just peel the beans. Then came the sound of a child murmuring in his sleep. Apparently, they were a young husband and wife. The wife was preparing dinner and the husband was cradling their sleeping child in his arms. Wei Wuxian grinned broadly as he winked at Lan Wangji. What a coincidence, he whispered. To think one of the farmhouse's owners is also an Argaga? His words had an upward lift to them, making his teasing obvious. Lan Wangji swept a profound look at him and then twisted his head away. Wei Wuxian's heart fluttered, and he leaned over to whisper in Lan Wangji's ear. Largaga. Lan Wangji's breaths seemed to have stuttered. The eyes he looked at him with seemed to hold a hint of a warning. In the yard, the wife chuckled. You don't know how to hug him properly. Later, if you make him wake up, I'll need to be the one who cheers him up again, won't I? The husband. He played too hard today. He must be very tired. He won't be able to wake up. The wife peeled the beans as she spoke. Argaga, you really need to discipline our Bao. He's only 4 and he's already like this. What would he be like when he grows up? How many times has the child cried? He said that he doesn't want to play with our Bao anymore. The husband. But he still comes back to him every single time. He says he doesn't want to, but in his heart he clearly wants to play with our Bao very much. Wei Wuxian laughed with a pff. Largaga, what are your thoughts on this? Do you agree? Lan Wangji, stop speaking. At that volume, average people wouldn't be able to hear them at all. The couple chatted about the usual things while on the other side, right next to Lan Wangji's ear, Wei Wuxian had already relentlessly repeated Largaga over half a dozen times, softly and lightly. Lan Wangji seemed to have finally run out of patience. He suddenly flipped around. His movement was both quick and steady. The straws didn't move at all, but Wei Wuxian was already underneath him. Lan Wangji's voice was low. "Any more, and you will be silenced." Wei Wuxian reached out toward his face, but Lan Wangji caught his hand at once. Wei Wuxian's tone was serious. "Han Guanjun, there's a straw on your forehead ribbon." Hearing this, Lan Wangji's hands finally relaxed. Wei Wuxian helped him pick off the thin straw, presenting it in front of his eyes as he gloated. "See, I wasn't lying, was I?" Before he could gloat for too long, he heard the young wife speak again. "But even if this is true, we shouldn't let our bao just bully others." Her husband spoke calmly. "Let him be. Boys, don't they bully other people only because they like them? They just want others to look at them." Hearing this, Wei Wuxian's smile froze. At this point in time, it seemed that the young child had woken up. He mumbled something in a creamy voice. The couple hurried to cheer him up together. A while later, the child fell asleep again. The young wife spoke. "Argaga, I told you to discipline Aba not only because of this. It's also because these days it isn't too safe. Tell him not to play around outside too much and get home earlier." The husband. "I know. Is it the thing with the old graves around the village have been dug out?" The wife. "I heard that it's not just around our village. Even among the people in the city, there are many who had something happen to their ancestors' graves. It's just too strange. Our Bao should play at home more. He shouldn't go outside so often." The husband. "That's right. It'd be awful if he runs into Yiling Patriarch." Wei Wuxian was speechless. The young wife spoke softly. "I've been listening to the Yiling Patriarch's story ever since I was young. I've always thought that if you don't be obedient to Yiling Patriarch will return to find you and take you back to feed his goals, was only the adults teasing the children. Who would have known that such a person really exists? And he really came back?" "Yeah," the husband chimed in. "The moment I heard about the grave digging, I thought of him. And I was right. The city is abuzz with rumors now." There was nothing Wei Wuxian could do but resign himself to being inextricably linked with grave digging. He'd done his fair share of it in the past, that much was true. The Sunshot campaign was by far the most infamous example. He dug the hell out of every last one ancestral graveyard and conscripted every last one of their clan's corpses into his army of the dead. And he'd also turned every single one cultivator he killed into his puppets, commanding them to slaughter their own kin and companions. During the Sunshot campaign, these deeds had been widely considered inspiring and praiseworthy. But as the Sunshot campaign dipped further into the past, they were treated with far more horror and contempt. Even Wei Wuxian himself shared the current public sentiment. In retrospect, he truly had gone too far. And with the exposing of his identity a few days ago, he couldn't really blame anyone for hearing about this rash of grave-digging incidents and immediately assuming them to be the work of the Yiling Patriarch. The wife spoke again. "Let's just hope that he knows who did him wrong. If he wants to seek revenge, then seek revenge on those cultivators. Please don't come harm us normal people." The husband. "Who could possibly guarantee that? When he killed over 3,000 people in Xichen, I was very young.
But I can still remember that back then, not only the immortals who cultivated, even normal people were scared of him. He's a bloodlusting demon who has no heart.
Wei Wuxian's grin gradually faded. He had been quite interested when listening to the couple talk about their daily lives. However, all of a sudden he felt that his head was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. He couldn't raise it to see the expression on Lao Wenji's face. What the couple chatted about next, he couldn't hear any of it. Suddenly, a chilling roar came from outside of the farm. The family in the yard had been having dinner, talking and laughing. When they heard the unhuman roar, they were so startled that even one of the bowls smashed onto the ground. The child began to cry. The young man snatched a hoe from the side. "Don't worry, don't worry." Not only were they surprised, even Wei Wuxian and Lao Wenji flinched. Lao Wenji was about to get up when Wei Wuxian thought of something and grabbed the clothing in front of his chest. "Don't move." Lao Wenji's eyes widened slightly. The roarer had definitely came from some dark, cruel creature. If the owner of the farm went to deal with it alone, he'd most likely not come back alive. In spite of this, Wei Wuxian repeated, "Don't move." A scream came from the yard along with more of those unhuman roars coming closer and closer. It had already entered the door. Lao Wenji couldn't stay still any longer. Beechen unsheathed at the speed of lightning. Yet, the family of 3 had already fled, running as they screamed. The stack of straw had been messed up by Beechen. Amid the straws raining down them, something entirely black stood in the middle of the yard. Its hair was tangled and it was still flashing its fangs. The disordered points that seemed to grow out of its body made it look both terrifying and somewhat funny. Lao Wenji had never seen such a monster before. He paused in surprise, while Wei Wuxian had spoken already. "Wennian, you haven't opened up your throat in too many years. Your shouts are really getting worse and worse." Human speech came out of the mouth of the dark monster. "Young master, I'm a fierce corpse after all. All fierce corpses sound like this when they shout." Wei Wuxian patted his shoulder. "Such strong energy." Wennian glanced at Lao Wenji. Probably having recalled that the Gusulan sect's people disliked those who didn't dress neatly, he smoothed his hair a couple of times, sheepish looking. As Wei Wuxian saw how many branches stuck out his hair, he almost couldn't bear it as he plucked one out. "Why did you suddenly jump out? And you're like this? Were you robbed? What's that on your face?" Wennian, "The dust and dirt on the ground. After I watched you two go inside and didn't come out for a long time." Wei Wuxian, "You always being following behind us?" Wennian nodded. Wei Wuxian understood. Wennian didn't dare meet with anyone except for him. And so, after they went down the cloud recesses, he secretly followed behind them. When he saw that nothing happened for a long time after they went inside the farm, he went to listen in and heard that the couple was talking about him. He felt awkward and wanted to scare them away so that Wei Wuxian and Lao Wenji could come out. Probably feeling that how he had looked wasn't daunting enough, he stuck a bunch of strange things to his face and his body. Wei Wuxian was laughing so hard that he was close to death.
With a look of embarrassment on his face, Wen Yang rubbed the mud away as Wei Wuxian suddenly found that his hands were covered in blood. What happened? Wen Yang, oh, nothing. Lao Wenji, the scent of blood. Wei Wuxian just realized that there really was the scent of blood coming from Wen Yang. His heart skipped a beat. As Wen Yang saw, he immediately waved his hands. Not blood! No, it is blood, but it's not the blood of live humans. Wei Wuxian, not the blood of live humans? Have you fought with anything? Wen Yang had led them for a while until they arrived at a patch of woods. In the woods, there were 20 or 30 new graves, along with a half-finished pit on the side and a pile of corpses beside the pit. He'd call it a pile and not a single corpse because the corpses were already quite broken. Wei Wuxian went up to examine it. The fingers of some of the severed arms were still twitching. The jaws of some of the heads were still opening and closing, creating the air-rising sound of teeth rubbing against one another. The corpses had transformed already. Wei Wuxian, you've broken them into quite a lot of pieces. Wen Yang, if I didn't, they'd keep on biting people. They couldn't be stopped at all. All along the way, there are corpses like this. Wei Wuxian, all along the way? Have you always been in front of us to get rid of these things? Wen Yang nodded in embarrassment. His ability to recognize those of his own was greater than that of humans, and he could recognize them from farther always as well. If this was the case, then that explained why nothing had happened during their journey. Wei Wuxian had found this strange as well. Didn't people say that a bunch of fierce corpses were traveling toward Yiling? Why didn't they say a single one of them? So Wen Yang had cleared the obstacles before them. Wei Wuxian, when did you begin to follow us? Lao Wenji, Koi Tower. Wei Wuxian looked at Wen Yang as Lao Wenji continued. The day of the fight with the cultivators, he helped. Wei Wuxian sighed. Didn't I tell you to hide somewhere and not worry about anything right now? Wen Yang forced a smile. But, young master, where could I hide? Before he had somewhere to return to, people he could follow. But now, in this world, apart from Wei Wuxian, everyone was unfamiliar to him. After a while of silence, Wei Wuxian stood up and patted at the dust at the lower hem of his clothes. Bury them. Wen Yang quickly nodded. He continued to dig the pit that had only been half finished. Lao Wenji pulled Bichen out. Its sword energy swept out. Dirt splashed everywhere, and a crevice was open in the ground. Wei Wuxian, Hang Guanjun, you're digging the grave too? Lao Wenji turned round. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Wen Yang standing behind him. Forcing up his frozen lips, he squeezed a smile. Young Master Lan, do you want any help? I'm finished with my side. Lao Wenji looked behind him. There were rows of black pits, the piles of dirt beside them tall and neat. Wen Yang maintained his smile as he added, I do this kind of thing a lot. I'm experienced and fast. On the topic of who it was that often made him do this kind of thing, no explanation was needed. After some silence, Lao Wenji finally spoke. There's no need. You can help. Before he could finish, he suddenly realized that Wei Wuxian didn't move at all. He had been squatting on the side, watching them. When he left the farm, he casually took with him a melon, and now he seemed to be trying to figure out how to open it. Meeting Lao Wenji's gaze, he protested. "Han Guanjun, don't look at me like that. I have nothing in my hands and my spiritual powers are low. Am I right? For every field, there are professionals." "It's true. Digging graves, he's the fastest. Why don't we talk about how to eat the melon? Beaten had gone into the dirt and we won't be able to use it as of now. Does anyone have any more knives or swords or those kinds of things on them?" Xiang shook his head. "Sorry, I didn't bring any." Wei Wuxian. "Han Guanjun, is Suibian with you?" Lao Wenji was speechless. Eventually, he took Suibian out of his jiangkum sleeve, melon in one hand and sword in the other. He showed off a sword routine and cut the little watermelon into 8 pieces. After he finished, he squatted on the ground, watching them dig graves diligently as he ate melon. Within an instant's time, Xiang had dug a row of neat uniform pits. He apologized as he interred the corpses he had previously dismembered. "I'm really sorry, everyone. I can't tell your corpses apart anymore. Please don't take offense if I bury you in the wrong arrangement." After finishing the melon and burying the remaining corpses, Wei Wuxian and Lao Wenji continued on their journey. Several days later, they arrived in Yiliang. The Burial Mounds were less than 5 kilometers ahead of this small town. Although they didn't know exactly what awaited them there, Wei Wuxian had a feeling it wasn't anything good. But Lao Wenji was right beside his side, his gait steady, his gaze cool. Wei Wuxian had never been one with any sense of crisis to begin with, and with the way Lao Wenji looked, he was even less likely to get nervous at all. Passing through the small town of Yiliang, he was awash in the sounds of the local accent. It was invigorating and incomparably endearing. While he wasn't planning on buying anything, he couldn't help but strike up conversations in the local dialect with the street vendors. Only after he'd had his fill of socializing did he get down to business. "Han Guanjun, you remember this town, right?" Lao Wenji gave a slight nod. "Yes." Wei Wuxian grinned. "I knew you had a better memory than me. We ran into each other once, right here in this town. I happened to bump into you when you came to Yiliang for a night hunt and said I'd treat you to a meal. Remember that too?" "Yes." "It's a shame you still ended up paying the bill." Wei Wuxian laughed. He sat cross-legged on the donkey, swaying back and forth, and asked with seeming nonchalance, "Speaking of which, Han Guanjun, do you have any plans to retreat in retirement?" Lao Wenji paused for a moment, seeming to be pondering the question. Wei Wuxian struck while the iron was hot and pushed further. "Have you even considered what you'll do when you retire?" Lao Wenji regarded him. "Not yet." "Perfect. Then I'll help you think." Wei Wuxian thought. He would find a sparsely populated spot with picturesque scenery and build a big house for himself there. He could help Lao Wenji build one next door too. There'd be home-cooked meals and soup every day. Of course, it would be best if Lao Wenji did the cooking. Otherwise, they'd be stuck with whatever Wei Wuxian made. It would be best if Lao Wenji handled the household finances as well. Before his eyes, There materialized an image of Lan Xichen wearing coarse clothing with patches sewn on his chest and knees, sitting expressionlessly at a handmade wooden table as he counted money one coin at a time. Once he finished counting, Lan Xichen would sling a hoe over his shoulder and head off to work for the day. Meanwhile, Wei Wuxian what would he do? Wei Wuxian reflected seriously on what he ought to be doing. People often talked about earning their daily necessities by working in the fields or weaving. Well, someone was already tilling the land, so that left him with the job of weaving. The very idea made him wince. He saw himself stuck sitting cross-legged in front of a loom all day, restlessly jiggling his knee. No, he should be the one out with the hoe, and Lan Xichen the one weaving. The latter was more suited to it. They would catch fish and till the fields during the day. At night, they'd head out with swords in hand to night hunt and slay evil. If they got bored of living the pastoral life, they could pretend there was no such things as retirement. They could re-enter society and it would all be the same. But this life of theirs was still missing a little one. A little what? Lan Xichen suddenly spoke up. Huh? It was then that Wei Wuxian realized he had said the last sentence out loud. He quickly and sensibly explained. I said, Little Apple is still missing a little companion. Little Apple twisted its head to look at him and spat hard. Wei Wuxian smacked its head and laughed as he pulled its long ears, but quickly found he could laugh no more. His daydreams had reminded him of something. He'd once had a little one with him. Had the child lived, he would have been in his teens now. The Burial Mounds were located deep in the Yiliang mountain range. It was said that the Burial Mounds were a mountain of corpses, that one could unearth a corpse by sticking a shovel into any given spot on the ground. This was true. The Burial Mounds were originally an ancient battleground, used in the following years as a dumping ground for unidentified bodies. This resulted in the place being swathed in a persistent, perpetual miasma of resentment and yin energy until it finally became the nightmare of everyone in the Yiliang region. The trees on the hillsides were black as coal, as if they had been contaminated by resentment. A wall more than 3 meters high had been constructed at the foot of the mountain. Its surface was densely packed with engraved incantations that prohibited humans and non-humans alike from crossing over, whether entering or leaving. This wall of incantations enclosed the entirety of the Burial Mounds and had originally been built by the third family head of the Yuan clan of Xichen. It was impossible to purify the overwhelming force of resentful spirits within, so they'd had to settle for the second best option, imprison and isolate them. Wei Wuxian had knocked down this wall once. The current one was new, rebuilt and reinforced under the Jin clan of Lan Liang's leadership. But upon their arrival, they discovered that a long stretch of the wall had been knocked down once again. Wei Wuxian left the donkey down at the bottom of the mountain. He stepped over the remains of the wall and walked up the mountain path. Soon later, he saw the stone statue of a headless beast. The statue was thousands of pounds in weight. It had guarded the mountain path for many years. Vines climbed over it and moss gathered at the dents. The head of the beast had been chopped off by an axe and tossed somewhere near. As if to assert power, it had been smashed into small pieces. The cut was still new, revealing the whiteness inside. Farther along, similarly, the next statue that they saw had been cut into two halves, from head to toe. Wei Wuxian knew at once that these were the stone beasts that the Sets had set onto the acupoints of the terrain to guard the mountain after he had died. The stone beasts were capable of exorcism. They required much craft and were quite expensive to produce. Now it was likely that all of them had been destroyed. It was truly a waste. Side by side, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji walked a few more steps. Inadvertently, looking back, he saw that Wenniang had already appeared. He stood beside the stone beast, head lowered and unmoving. Wei Wuxian asked, "Wenniang, what are you looking at?" Wenniang pointed at the base of the stone beast. The stone beast was on top of a short, thick tree trunk. By the trunk, there were three smaller, shorter trunks. They seemed to have been burnt over by fire. They were entirely black. Wenniang kneeled on the ground with both of his knees. His fingers dug deeply into the dirt, grabbing a handful of black dirt and clenched it within his palm. "Sister." Wei Wuxian didn't know what to say. He walked over and patted his shoulder hard. Throughout Wei Wuxian's life, two periods of time had been extremely hard to endure. Both happened here. He never intended to visit such a place again. And to Wenniang, Burial Mound was even more of an unforgettable place. A gust of cold breeze swept over. The sea of trees rustled as though tens of thousands of thin voices whispered. Wei Wuxian listened carefully. Kneeling on the ground with one knee, he bent down and murmured something toward the earth below him. Suddenly, a bump formed below the surface. As though a pale flower had blown out of the black soil, a skeleton arm slowly broke through the dirt. The portion of the skeleton arm was weakly suspended in the air. Wei Wuxian reached out and grabbed it. He bent down even lower. His long hair fell from his shoulder, masking half of his face. He pressed his lips toward the skeleton hand and whispered something. Then he was quiet, as though he was listening for something. A while later, he nodded slightly. The hand formed a flower bud again and withdrew into the soil. Wei Wuxian stood up and swept away the dirt on him. "These days, they've taken over 100 people up here. They're all at the top, still alive. The people who took them have already gone down the mountain though. I don't know what they want to do. Anyways, we should be careful." The three continued upward. They came along a few run-down shacks standing alongside the mountain path. The houses varied in size. The structure was simple, even crude. Just one glance, it was obvious that they had been built rashly. Some were so burned that only bare frames were left, while some slumped entirely to one side. Even the most complete ones were half destroyed. After being under over 10 years of rain and wind, with nobody to care for them, each looked like dying ghosts in tattered clothing, looking down in silence at those who came up the mountain.
Ever since they had gone up the mountain, Wenliang's footsteps had been specially heavy. Right now, standing before one of the houses again, he couldn't walk any longer. This was a house he'd built with his own hands. Before he'd left, this house had been perfectly intact. Although it was simple and rudimentary, it had been a perfect shelter from storms and a home to people he knew and cherished. As the saying went, things remain but people change. While the things remained, there was nothing left here to remind him of the people that were long gone. "Don't look," Wei Wuxian told him. "I knew long ago that it would be like this," Wenliang said. "I just wanted to see if there was anything left." Before he could finish, a human figure rose unsteadily to its feet inside one of the dilapidated houses. It lumbered outside, exposing its partially decayed face to the faint daylight. Wei Wuxian clapped his hands. The walking corpse remained oblivious and continued to lumber towards them. Wei Wuxian calmly took 2 steps back. "It's being controlled by the Ying Tiger Tally." Corpse puppets that had previously submitted to him would not be subject to the control of the Ying Tiger Tally. Similarly, corpse puppets that were currently being manipulated by the Ying Tiger Tally would not heed his command. The rule was simple and crude. First come, first served. Wenliang lunged forward. He ripped the corpse's head off with a snarl. Immediately afterward, a low noise rumbled all around them. 40 or 50 animated corpses slowly lumbered out of the black forest. Most of these corpses, male and female, young and old, were still fresh and dressed in burial clothes. They were likely the corpses that had recently gone missing from various regions. Lan Wangji flipped out his guqin and strummed. The sound rippled outward and all round, and the advancing horde of corpses that had surrounded them instantly kneeled. Wenliang lifted an extraordinary burly male corpse with both hands and flung it several meters away, impaling it through the chest on a sharp branch. It struggled incessantly, stuck in place. "Don't bother with them," Wei Wuxian ordered. "Head straight up the mountain." He had no idea how many walking corpses Jin Guangyao had managed to frenetically summon with the Yin Tiger Tally over the last few days. Wave after wave kept coming, and the trio beat back the hordes as they withdrew up the mountain. The closer they came to the top of the Burial Mounds, the denser the hordes of corpses grew. The music of the guqin reverberated through the sky above the towering black forest, and crows took flight from the trees at the sound. It was nearly 4 hours before that they were finally able to rest. Sitting atop one of the destroyed stone beasts, Wei Wuxian sighed as he mocked himself. "I've always been the one using this to deal with others. Today, it's finally my turn to have others use it against me. Now I know just how obnoxious the tiger seal is. If I were them, I would have wanted to kill the person who created this damn thing as well." Lan Wangji put his guqin away. He pulled out a sword from within his sleeves and passed it to him. "To protect yourself." Wei Wuxian took it over. It was Suibian. After the day when it had been used to cut the melon, Wei Wuxian tossed it to the side. Lan Wangji put it away again. He unsheathed the sword and stared for a while
at the snowy blade before sheathing it back inside right away, smiling. "Thank you." He wore it by his waist and didn't seem like he was going to use it. Seeing how Lan Wangji looked at him, he fiddled with his hair and explained, "I haven't used a sword in so many years. I'm not used to it." As he spoke, he sighed again. "All right. The real reason is that my current body is low in spiritual energy. Even if there's a high-level sword, it won't be able to make the best use of it. And so, it'll be up to Xiang Guanjin to protect the delicate man that I am." Lan Wangji was speechless. The frail, delicate man sat for a while before he finally braced his hands on his knees and pushed himself upright. The trio continued to ascend the mountain for a while longer. At the end of the path, they reached a cave. The mouth of the cave was around 50 feet in both height and width. Before they were even near, they could feel a cold breeze in front of them. They could almost hear the blurry sounds of human moans. This was the legendary den where the Yiling Patriarch made humans into his corpses and did the deeds that even the heavens couldn't tolerate. The demon slaughtering cave. The ceiling of the cave was broad. The three held their breaths and snuck inside. Nobody made a noise, but the human voices coming from the depths of the cave grew louder. Wei Wuxian knew the terrain of the cave like the back of his palm. He walked in the front. At some point, he gestured for them to stop. The main area of the cave was just a wall away from them. Through the holes on the wall, they could see a large enough area that could contain 1,000 people. In the center sat around 100. Both their hands and their feet were tightly bound by deity binding ropes. The 100 people were quite young as well. Judging from the color of their robes and their swords, they were either high-level disciples or direct disciples from clans. Wei Wuxian exchanged a look with Lan Wangji. Before they began to discuss, a boy sitting on the ground suddenly spoke up. "In my opinion, I don't think we should have stabbed him only once. Why didn't you just slash his throat out?" His voice wasn't big, but the cave was rather empty. Echoes vibrated as soon he spoke. And so, even if they didn't listen in, they could hear his words with clarity. As soon as the boy spoke, Wei Wuxian thought that he both looked and sounded familiar. He only remembered after a while. Wasn't this the one who fought with Jin Liang in the other day? Jin Chen? He took another look at the frosty, gloomy-looking youth beside the aforementioned boy. Who else could it be, if not Jin Liang? Jin Liang didn't even spare a look at Jin Chen, but kept his head down and said nothing. A loud rumble gurgled from the stomach of another boy sitting beside him. "They've been gone for days," the boy complained. "What do they even want from us? If they want to kill us, to chop us to bits, they could at least make it quick. I'd rather be gnawed to death by a monster during a night hunt than starve to death here." The one blubbering on and on was Lan Xichen. "What else could they want?" Jin Chen shot back. "They must be planning to do the same thing he did to the Wen dogs during the Sunshot campaign. They'll turn us into his corpse puppets. Then use us against our families so they can't bring themselves to attack. They want to let their enemies do the work of killing each other off." Through gritted teeth, he growled, "That despicable, inhuman Wei dog!" All of a sudden, Jin Liang icily cut him off. "Shut up!" Jin Chen was stunned. "Shut up? What do you mean, shut up? What do I mean? Jinliang echoed mockingly. Did you go deaf or stupid? So you can't understand human speech? Shut up means stop making such a racket. Having been tied up for a while, Jingchen was in quite a cantankerous mood. Who are you to tell me to shut up? He raged. Jinliang, what's the use of talking so much garbage? If we go on, would the ropes break because of you? It's annoying. You? We are trapped here, another young voice interrupted. There are countless walking corpses outside, and we have no idea if or when they will decide to charge in. Do you really still want to bicker at a time like this? The calmest voice of the bunch was, of course, Lan Xichen. He started it, Jingchen objected. What? You can cuss people out but won't let them return the favor? Ha! Jinliang, who do you think you are? You think just because Liang Fenzun is the cultivation chief now, you will be one day? I won't shut up. The way I see it, you... A thud echoed through the cave as Jinliang slammed his head into Jingchen's. Jingchen cried out in pain and cursed. You want to fight? Bring it on! You piss me off now, you motherless ill-bred brat! Jinliang was absolutely livid when he heard this. He couldn't throw punches with his arms bound, so he pummeled Jingchen with his elbows and knees until the latter was yelping in pain. But Jinliang was just one person, and Jingchen always had a pose to back him up. The moment his cronies saw Jingchen was at a disadvantage, they immediately yelled, "We'll help!" and came swarming over. Lan Xichen was sitting nearby. He couldn't help but let himself be dragged into their fight. At first, he could manage to persuade, "Everyone calm down, calm down." But after he had received a few elbows, he scrunched his eyebrows in pain, his face darkening. In the end, after a cry, he entered the brawl as well. The three outside couldn't watch this any longer. Wei Wuxian leaped into the stairs leading to the cave first. Hey, everybody, look here! His shout echoed within the empty cave, almost thunderous. The tangled boys looked up. Lan Xichen saw a familiar figure beside him and beamed. Han Guanjun! Lan Jie yelled even louder. Han Guanjun! Ah! Jingchen was terrified. What are you happy about? They're on the same side! Wei Wuxian strode into the demon-quelling cave. He pulled Suibian out of its sheath and offhandedly shocked it. Behind him, the sword was caught in free fall by a shadow that darted forward. It was Wennian. The group of juniors screamed and shrieked again. The Ghost General! Wennian raised Suibian and slashed the sword down toward Jinliang. Jinliang gritted his teeth and shut his eyes. But contrary to his expectations, he felt the immortal binding rope's hold on him slacken as Suibian severed it. Wennian walked around the cave, slicing free all the immortal binding ropes. The juniors he set free could neither flee nor stay. Inside the cave was the Yiling Patriarch, the Ghost General, and Han Guanjun, who had betrayed the orthodox way. But outside lurked countless walking corpses braying for food. Caught on the horns of a dilemma, they all could do was shrink back into a corner and stare fixedly at the stoic Wennian as he busied himself around the cave. Lan Xichen, however, was beaming brightly. More, wait, Chambe! You're here to rescue us, right? You weren't the one who had us captured and brought here, right? Although it was a question, his expression spoke of complete trust and delight. Wei Wuxian felt his heart grow warm. He squatted down to ruffle Lan Xishui's hair, which had somehow stayed neat over the past few trying days, and mess it all up. Me? You know how poor I am. Where would I get the money to hire people? Lan Xichen nodded again and again. Ha ha, I knew it. I knew that Xiang is really very poor. Wei Wuxian was momentarily struck speechless. Good boy, he finally faintly praised. How many people do our opponents have? Are there any ambushes set up around here? Lan Xichen shook off the robe on him and barged into the conversation to answer. They have lots of people. Their faces were covered with black smoke, so we didn't get a clear look at what they looked like. They tied us up and threw us in here. Then just ignored us, like they wanted to leave us to perish here. Oh, there are lots of walking corpses outside. They keep on howling. Bichen emerged from its sheath with a Xiang to sever the remaining immortal binding ropes that bound the two of them. Lan Wangji summoned the sword back into its sheath and commanded Lan Xichen. Well done. What he meant was that Lan Xichen had done well to keep his composure and maintain his trust in them. Lan Xichen hurried to his feet and stood tall as he faced Lan Wangji. But before he could manage a smile, Wei Wuxian intervened with a cheeky comment. That's right. Well done indeed. Xichen even knows how to brawl now. Lan Xichen's face flushed red in an instant. That was a momentary impulse. All of a sudden, Wei Wuxian sensed someone approaching. He looked back only to see Jinliang standing stiffly behind them. Lan Wangji immediately stepped in front of Wei Wuxian to shield him, and Lan Xichen stepped in front of Lan Wangji. Jingon, sir, Lan Xichen cautiously called. Wei Wuxian strode out from behind them. What are the two of you doing? It's like you're making a human pyramid. Jinliang's expression was strange as he relaxed his fists, clenched them, and relaxed them again. He looked like there was something he wanted to say but couldn't. Instead, he just stared at the spot where he stabbed Wei Wuxian in the abdomen. Lan Xiao's face drained of color. You're not thinking about stabbing him again, are you? Jinliang's expression froze. Jia! Lan Xichen admonished hurriedly. Wei Wuxian wrapped his arms around the kiddos' necks, with a Jia on his left and a Xichen on his right. All right, let's hurry out, he chided. Yes, sir, Lan Xichen answered. The other boys were still huddled together in the corner, not daring to move. Let's go? Or do you want to stick around here? Lan Xichen asked the crowd. The boy stiffened his neck and said, There are so many walking corpses out there. You want us to go to our deaths? Gone, sir. I'll go out and chase them away, Wenliang stated. Wei Wuxian nodded, and in an instant Wenliang swept out like a gust of wind. The immortal binding ropes have been cut, Lan Xichen said. If worst comes to worst, we'll join forces and work as one to fight our way out. What if the corpses swarm in after we depart? Judging by the topography of this cave, Won't you be easy prey if you stay here?
Having said this, he pulled Lan Xichen with him. The two of them followed after Wenniang, and several other land juniors followed suit. The rest of the boys exchanged looks of dismay. Soon after, someone called out,
"See, Xiang, wait for me."
He caught up and left with them. This boy was the little seed of sentiment who burned paper money and cried emotionally over Xiang back in City. The others called him Xichen. He seemed to be the single child of the Baliang Ouyang sect's clan. Soon, a few of the boys followed as well, all of them familiar faces from the City incident. The rest of the boys had been hesitant, but as they looked around, they saw Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji staring at them. They felt nervous no matter which of the two stared at them, and they could only pass around them and leave as well, the back of their heads tingling. The last one was Jinliang. As the group of boys, pulling and dragging, almost arrived at the mouth of the cave, a shadow was suddenly thrown inside, creating a deep human-shaped dent in the wall. Dust and rocks showered down. The cries of the couple of juniors came from the front.
"The Ghost General!"
Wei Wuxian.
"Wenniang, what happened?"
Wenniang managed.
"Nothing."
He fell from the dent, stood up, and quietly yet roughly attacked the broken arm back into his body. As Wei Wuxian looked, he saw a young man in purple stand before the cave, arm dangling. Obsidian sizzled and sparked below his hand. This was the whip that had thrown Wenniang into the cave. Junction. So that was why Wenniang had no intention of attacking. Jinliang.
"Uncle!"
Jiangchen ordered coldly.
"Jinliang, come here."
From the dark forest behind him slowly walked out a group of cultivators from different sects wearing uniforms of different colors. The group grew larger and larger. In estimation, there were almost 2,000, a large black blanket that surrounded the cave. These cultivators, including Jiangchen, all bathed in blood, their faces tired. All of the boys rushed outside the cave shouting, "Dad, Mom, Brother!" They were embraced into the crowd. Jinliang looked left and right as though he still hadn't decided yet. Jiangchen's voice was harsh.
"Jinliang, why are you so slow? What are you taking your time for? Do you want to die?"
Lan Xichen stood before the crowd. He seemed much older. Strands of white even began to grow at his temples. He called, "Wangji?" Lan Wangji answered in a low voice, "Uncle?" But he still didn't stand to his side. Lan Xichen understood more than anyone. This was Lan Wangji's answer, firm, resolute. With a disappointed expression, he shook his head. He didn't try to persuade him any further. A woman in white robes stood forward, her eyes filled with tears.
"Han Guanjun, just what is wrong with you? You're not you anymore. In the past, you clearly could not even stand the Elim Patriarch. Just what technique did Wei Wuxian use to be with you for you to stand on this side opposite to us?"
Lan Wangji didn't pay attention to her. Having not received a reply, the woman could only add in pity,
"If so, then how undeserving of your name."
Wei Wuxian.
"You people are here again."
Jiangchen's voice was cold.
"Of course we are."
Su Shi had on his back his 7-stringed sitar. He was standing amid the crowd as well, his tone unconcerned.
If not for how the Yilim Patriarch so blatantly dug out corpses and captured people as soon as he returned, as if he was almost scared that the world didn't welcome him, I don't think that we would have had to grace your den so soon either.
Wei Wuxian rebuffed the accusations.
I clearly saved these juniors. Why are you people jumping to accuse me instead of thanking me?
Many in the crowd scoffed and grumbled.
Now the wolf is crying wolf.
Wei Wuxian knew that arguing with them was futile, but he was in no hurry anyway.
Come now,
Wei Wuxian flashed a smile.
Your turnout this time is a little shabby. We are missing two prominent figures, aren't we? Might I ask why Liang Fenzun and Savijin are not in attendance at this grand occasion?
Su Shi sneered.
The day before yesterday, an unknown assailant made an assassination attempt on Liang Fenzun at Golden Carp Tower. He's seriously injured, and Savijin is doing his best to save him. Why ask if we already know?
Learning that Jin Guangyao was seriously injured reminded Wei Wuxian of the heroic suicide feint that had allowed him to carry out a sneak attack on Mengzhe. He snorted with laughter, unable to stop himself in time. Su Shi frowned.
What are you laughing about?
Nothing, Wei Wuxian answered.
Just thinking that Liang Fenzun is pretty prone to getting injured. That's all.
A tiny voice suddenly spoke up.
Dad, I think maybe he really isn't the culprit. He was the one who saved us back at E City, and he seems to be here to save us this time too.
He followed the voice. The person who spoke was Lan Xichen. However, the father immediately scolded the son.
Children shouldn't talk so carelessly. Do you know what situation we are in? Do you know who that is?
Withdrawing his gaze, Wei Wuxian spoke calmly.
Now I understand.
He had known from the start that no matter what he said, nobody would listen to him. What he denied could be forced, what he admitted could be twisted. Lan Xichen originally had quite a lot of weight in his words, but now that he was with him, he was most likely a target of the people as well. He had thought that with at least Lan Xichen among the sects, they could discuss for a while, but Lan Xichen and Jin Guangyao weren't even present. Back then, during the first siege of Burial Mound, Jin Guangyao led the Lan Xichen sect, while Jiang Chen led the Yunmenqian sect. Lan Xichen led the Gusulan sect, while Mengzhe led the Xiang sect. The former two were the main forces. The latter two could have gone without. Now, the Lan Xichen sect leader hadn't arrived yet, having only sent people for the Gusulan sect to command. The Gusulan sect was still led by Lan Xichen. Huaisang replaced his brother's position, shrunken within the crowd, his face still full of "I don't know anything about."
I don't want to do anything, and I'm just here for the numbers.
Only Jiang Chen was still the one, surrounded by hostile energy, face insidious, staring straight at him. But Wei Wuxian looked slightly to the side. He saw Lan Xichen, who stood beside him without any hint of hesitation, any thought of withdrawing. But this time, he wasn't alone anymore. Under the hungry eyes of thousands of cultivators, a middle-aged man finally couldn't hold it anymore. He jumped out and shouted,
Wei Wuxian, do you still remember me?
Wei Wuxian answered honestly, No. The middle-aged cultivator laughed coldly.
You don't? But my leg does. He lifted the bottom of his robe, revealing a prosthetic leg made of wood. This leg of mine was destroyed by you that night in the Nightless City. I'm showing this to you for you to understand that among the people in the siege right now, there's also the force of me. Yi Wei Chun. With the works of karma, it's never too late for revenge. As though having been inspired by him, a young cultivator stood out as well. His voice was clear. Wei Wuxian, I won't ask you if you remember or not. Both of my parents died by your hands. You owe too many people. You definitely won't remember them either. But I, Fang Menchen, will never forget and never forgive you. Immediately after, the third person stepped forward. It was a middle-aged cultivator of the arts, figure slim, eyes gleaming. This time, Wei Wuxian moved first in asking, Did I make you lose a limb? The man shook his head. Wei Wuxian asked again, Did I kill your parents or destroy your whole sect? The man shook his head again. Wei Wuxian mused. Then why did you come here? I bear no personal grudge against you, the man said. I came here to join the fight in order for you to understand that he who goes against the world deserves to be condemned by all. No matter what despicable methods you use or how many times you crawl out of your tomb, we will send you back for no reason other than the pursuit of righteous justice. The crowd broke into defeating cheers at his declaration. Well said, Sekli de Yao. Sekli de Yao stepped down with a smile. Encouraged, the others stood up, one at a time, to declare war upon Wei Wuxian. Your underling Wenniang snapped my son's neck during the Jiangqi path ambush. My Xiang died because of a vicious curse. His whole body covered in festering scars from wicked gu venom. I'm here for no other reason than to prove that there is still justice in this world. Evil will not be tolerated. Every face boiled with heated blood, every word spoken guiltlessly, every person heroic, passionate, filled with indignation and pride. Everyone believed with no doubt that what they were doing was a feat of chivalry, a deed of honor. It would go down in history and receive millions of praise. It was a crusade of the righteous against the wrong.